Our guest this episode is Mickie Kennedy. Back in 1998, Mickie realized that small businesses desperately needed a press release service they could actually afford. He saw an opportunity to help, and the company eReleases was born. Now, over the years, eReleases has grown and now even works with big names, but the spirit of Mickie's original intent has not changed. eReleases delivers personal service and exceptional value to every customer with every press release and at every price point. Mickie holds a Master's of Fine Arts in Creative Writing from George Mason University. He lives in Baltimore County with his family and two feuding cats. And when he's not helping businesses amplify their stories, he's writing poetry and nursing his diet soda addiction and being a guest on podcasts. So just like this. So I'd like to extend a warm welcome to the Engaging Personalities podcast to Mickie Kennedy. Welcome, Mickie.
Welcome to the Engaging Personalities podcast. I'm Anders Belanger, founder and CEO of Engagify, where we're on a mission to rehumanize business through engagement. We believe that we can all be more successful if we can command attention and deepen connection. So stick around to the end of the show and we'll reveal how you can be our next guest on a future episode. So let's get ready to engage.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome. So Mickie, just to get things out of the way right off the beginning, off the top, do your cats not actually get along? Is that true?
Yeah, they don't. They just have always been like oil and water.
Okay, but not full out,
no,
fights.
they don't kill each other,
Okay,
but
good.
there's friction always.
Okay, because for me, there's nothing more terrifying than hearing two cats fight in the night. So that's
Yeah.
very cool. I'm glad to hear it. So let's start at the start. How did you get started in, the PR side of the world?
Right. So my game plan was get my graduate degree, an MFA in creative writing with an emphasis in poetry, and then just wait tables and write poetry and live a very bohemian little life.
Yeah.
And so I did that. I graduated. I spent the summer afterwards waiting tables. I'd always done that part-time, but now I was doing it full-time. And I just realized it was exhausting and psychologically draining. And so I just said, at the end of the summer, I got to find a safe office job. And so I got hired at a telecom research startup in DC as employee number 3. And because I had writing in my background, they said, hey, write press releases and, here's the list to fax them to. And the owner had done it once or twice, but he was a telecom attorney. He was always busy and putting out fires. So it sort of just fell on me. And I sent them out. Not much happened. And the attorney said, yeah, media doesn't really work, but, it's worth a try. And I took that as sort of like, a challenge to try and figure out what was going wrong, because I just imagined that it could work. And, like the most recent one that I had sent was about inbound and outbound telecom traffic to the Caribbean and the United States back and forth. And it was basically the numbers of that year. And nobody responded. And I just felt like, looking at what journalists write about, they write about stories. Even the smallest article generally follows a little bit of a story arc. And I just realized that just publishing data wasn't giving them the story. And so I went back and said, hey, there's one country here that's got probably more inbound and outbound traffic to the US than all the other combined. And I was like, do we know why? And so we researched it a little bit and found out that at the time, it was like the center for which calls were routed for 1-900 numbers, which were very popular in the US in the early 1990s. And so for 50 cents a minute or something, you could get a pre-recorded horoscope. You'd call a particular line, enter an extension for your sign. And you could also call and get a psychic reading live, and you could actually call to get advice for your pets if you got two cats that don't get along. And so and there was other dating and more romantic things that it was used for, but I wrote that press release focusing on the story and sent that out, and that one immediately got picked up by the Financial Times, the Economist, the Wall Street Journal, and the Washington Post, as well as several trade publications. And so I was like, whoa, and the phones rang, orders came in, and uh, it- I made everybody look good, and they were all like, "Can you do that again?" And I was like, "I'll try." And so I would hunt around for stories and data points, and I would send out those releases, and we always got media pickup. I did one where I noticed not just looking at that year's data, but going back and seeing patterns and said, hey, in countries where there's like double digit economic growth, especially pre-industrialized countries, there's usually a double digit telecom growth to and from the United States, usually 2 to 3 years before that. And when we sent that one out and it got picked up, it got picked up in like Investors Business Daily and Barron's and stuff like that. And all of a sudden we started getting orders from hedge funds and investment firms and a whole new slice of customer that we had never sold to before. And just to let you know the value of this data at the time, we sold it in a paper book format once a year. That year's data was about $600 when I started. Today, it's a license where you access it electronically, and I think starts at $20,000 to $30,000 a year. So they were able to recognize the value of their data because they're the only one that has it. And as a result, media and PR really helped them get the exposure and all the different avenues of different types of people for which this data would be important. And so that was really transformative from my standpoint, and really got me thinking, could I do this for other businesses? And I also was getting tired of faxing. And as I faxed, I started getting phone calls saying, hey, we received this press release. In the future, could you email it to us? And I was like, sure, let me get your email address. And that was the light bulb moment where, email is so much easier. If you've ever programmed 100 phone numbers into a fax machine, it takes a long time. And then hitting send and sitting back and waiting for it to spit out the error pages, it's frustrating. And I just felt like email was such a really cool new thing. And I started reaching out to journalists in my spare time, which wasn't considerable working for a startup, and just networking with them online, mostly bulletin boards, which were popular at the time. And about a year later, I had almost 10,000 journalists in a database. And I started eReleases on a part-time basis initially, and then was able to focus on it full-time. And I just loved being able to help small businesses and sort of get their messages out there.
Hmm. I find that backstory amazing, and the fact that you're like hitting home runs from the beginning. It seems right, like you
Well,
figured out.
there were a few before that didn't
Okay,
have the story,
okay,
and it was
okay.
just
To
the
be fair,
data, and that they
yeah,
weren't responding to it. And the funny
yeah.
thing is, one of the things I tell people today is when I look at their release, is there data we could put into it? Because data can help you, but you still have to have that story arc. But sometimes beefing up your existing press release with some publicly available numbers and data that's out there can really help show the stakes. Like if you have a software solution or a service, and there it's critical to a business, you can actually point out like the 5-year failure rate in your industry and what that percentage is, and that really shows the stakes of why your solution may be so important.
Yeah, I love that piece too that you talked about. They were just putting out the data, and then you found the story in the data. And I just think about all of the companies that we talk to, and we work with a lot of technology companies that they're always pushing the data about their solution. But yeah, the storytelling is really what makes it memorable. It makes it newsworthy, makes it readable, right? And just in the interest level is just an engagement is so much higher. So I think that's a good takeaway right off the bat for people in multiple levels. So well, let me ask you about this, because I find that, and you did kind of talk about what you do, but I find that the whole public relations industry, or whatever you want to call that, is kind of a mystery to a lot of people, right? It's kind of like I don't know what to do. You talk to them and they make it happen, and you just but it's and I think we were talking about too in the intro a little bit how a lot of PR firms had very high rates, right? So it was kind of a little bit of a deterrent to, for people to find out what they're all about and that sort of thing. So can you just kind of simply describe what it is that, public relations firms do and just demystify it a little bit? And then let's unpack some of that.
Sure. So PR firms generally, um, you know, take your message and send it to the media. They may be involved with other types of relationships with the public. Some will do your social media, some will do other things like that. But predominantly, getting media attention is the big thing. And in this world, we call it earned media. When you have earned that media and actually had an article written about you. We're not talking about the press release duplicated on a website. That's syndication that happens even with the big news wires, but it's really not important. They're usually on locations of the website that no one's really looking at. And if you even do a search on most of these websites, your press release wouldn't show up because it's sort of not considered their content and not even really in their content management system. And other things that media do is, they actually write the release and then they'll send it to the media. And in some cases, they'll write a pitch, which is not a press release, but often shorter. And it's just a hook to get them interested. And they'll pitch that via email, as well as maybe doing some phone pitching as well. And there's a lot of follow up with those pitches that they do through email because the big thing that's happened over the last 26 years since I started was the explosion of media databases. And so I started with email and it was cool and novel and all these journalists said, sure, send them to me. But today they're being inundated with
Yeah.
off topic releases. If you're a golf club manufacturer and you just spent $10,000 to $15,000 on a media database, and you realize there's only 1,800 people in there that are interested in golfing products, and yet there's over 500,000 other media there, you start talking yourself into, well, bakers play golf, business people play golf. Let's send it to banking and business publications. And these financial analysts and stuff are never going to cover golf clubs. They're only going to write about the economics of a company, usually a publicly traded company. And so you're just really doing a disservice to them. And this happens in all industries. People talk themselves into sending off target press releases. It doesn't cost them anything. And they just feel
Yeah.
like, what do we have to lose? And so for that reason, how I originally started has turned out to be terrible. But fortunately, PR Newswire approached me, I think over 10 years ago and said, hey, we like what you're doing and we'd love to support you somehow and maybe give you access to the wire. And, they were sort of framing it as a local distribution where I'd pay a couple $100s. And I was pointing out that my clients, really deserve national attention and the local saturation as well. And they charge $1,600 for a 600-word press release today, and so it's very expensive. And I just didn't think we would be able to, reach a compromise. But one of the things that I noticed in our ongoing talks was that they have an overnight editorial team. And they said that they don't do much of anything. They're there in case there's breaking news, a recall, or they need to get something out to the Asian markets, but they largely sit idle for hours. And so I propose that I start scheduling my releases instead of for immediate distribution when a customer places an order, schedule it for next business day by default. And then that way, it doesn't cost them any additional labor to set up the release on their systems. They could do that overnight. And so that was what sort of got us to the point of working together. And it's been really good relationship since, where we're giving people access to a national distribution over PR Newswire. Doesn't matter what service you buy at eReleases, but you're not going to pay anything close to $1,600 with us. It's probably, with a new customer special, a third the price of going directly to the Newswire.
Gotcha. And I think you mentioned something that I think is really important in your line of work is relationships, right? Like the idea that you and also we talked about the prices and that being a deterrent so that these like we said, PR Newswire is not inundated with crap, right? Like, so it's kind of a filter of sorts, right? It's got to be of certain importance. But let's go back to the relationship piece there, Mickie, in terms of when you have that credibility and you've consistently over time delivered good quality, releases and stories. Is that how the relationship builds, or kind of speak to that a bit?
Right. So, when it comes to the media, I started by networking and talking directly to the media, and that is the most ideal way to do it. I always tell people who call and say, "We're just looking for local media, or we're just a local business. We're not interested in national media attention." I always tell them, start building a relationship with the local media now. This is not something you need to pay for. Don't, give me or a service like me your money. If you think about it and break it down, for most people in your local market, there's probably less than a dozen people who could potentially cover you. And, I'm including TV and radio here as well. And so, just do the research and find out who they are and ask for their email address. These are not celebrities. They will give you that email address, surprisingly. And, they're members of the community. They're supposed to be covering, the market. So they will give it to you. Just call and ask for it. They may put you through directly to the journalist and just say, "Hey, I from time to time have I feel really good pitches that I'd like to send you about my business, which is XYZ and this in our community," and they'll give it to you unless they have like another preferred way. Like maybe there's a couple of guys still wanting you to fax them, but I doubt that. Um, and uh, and then just reach out to them on a regular basis as you have ideas and brainstorm ideas. Be creative. Set up Google alerts for competitors in other cities. And if you ever see them get picked up, or maybe just the individual companies listed, but maybe you could also just list your industry and maybe not make it national. And as you see stories that other people get, don't go to them and say, "Hey, St. Louis covered this angle in their publication, and you can do the same thing for me." No, that seems crass, and you're asking them a copy. But you could say, "Hey, I've noticed a trend where people are talking about, uh, you know, going green for dry cleaners, and as a local dry cleaner, I would love to share with you all the ways in which we are going green, and maybe." Bullet list a couple of those, and then put an amazing quote there. Say something in a sentence that is very succinct, very direct, very powerful, very concise. That's what makes an amazing quote. You don't have to be a wordsmith. It helps if you are, but it's something that most anyone can do. You want it so that if an article is written around that, and they took it out, there'd be a loss. You'd be like, "Oh, that was said so much better in that quote." So few people put the time and energy in their quotes, and they're just softballs. But if you have an amazing quote and a okay idea for a pitch, a journalist will sometimes run with it because the quote is so strong. They know that they can write into the article and make it even
Mm.
better as a result of that. And it really gives you a distinct advantage over someone else who has a also mediocre story idea, but they don't have a quote, or it's just a soft quote. And so really put some time and energy in that, in the press release or in your pitch. And when you're dealing with local media, you don't need to go through the effort of a press release. It really is just a few sentences telling them what the outline of the big idea is and how you're available, and have a great quote there. If it's something that is image specific, like a product, or you're providing a service and you have some great images, be sure to include that as well. um, Maybe not in the print publication, but on the online publication, some of these media outlets will actually include your photo, and they know that online audiences engage better with a article that has a photo than one that doesn't. So again, gives you a more of an advantage when you are pitching these people. And also, it can be a candid shot. Actually, it probably should be. The whole idea of these professional shots that were just so over the top corporate, we've moved away from it.
Yeah.
People engage with, things that look like they were shot on their phone, and it can be shot on your phone. You really don't have to spend a lot of money on that. As you get your database and your local market together, just send to them on a regular basis, at minimum quarterly, or more often if as you have ideas.
Yeah.
You don't want to be a pest, but you do want to be consistent and persistent in pitching good ideas and strategies. And when you think about it, don't don't forget about business magazines and newspapers. If you're in a consumer market, there's consumer magazines that are probably out there. Baltimore has one that's a little upscale consumer magazine. So does Washington, D.C. I think it's called the Washingtonian. Are there things like that? Don't discount the weekly free papers in neighborhoods. If you're a local business, owning a neighborhood is really powerful. And I've actually coached a lot of people to get columns in those. Now, the way to do it is to have a article ready to go and show it as a sample, and include that and say, I'm willing to do a monthly column. They're going to ask weekly because they're a weekly publication. Just say, no, only commit to monthly. So that's really you just doing 12 articles a year.
Mhm.
It's very modest, but the weekly papers are so chasing advertisers that content is an afterthought. And sometimes they're like, wow, now we have to find some content to squeeze in between the ads. And so if you come with a ready-made solution, like say you're a chiropractor and you're talking about health and fitness and your joints and the benefits of walking, all those things, you can have a very short column each month where you talk about something and you get a byline or a sentence or two about who you are and your business. And that's a great way for people who are a little timid about, oh, I've never seen a chiropractor, I'm not sure. They feel
Mhm.
comfortable with you over time, and then they're more likely to seek you out. Works for dentists, works for all different types of people, therapists, all different types. So, find opportunities that are out there. In the local market, you'll find that as you reach out to these places, you may go a year and nobody picks you up. But after a while of you doing this, they will sometimes just reach out to you. They're like, hey, I'm working on this article about, uh, work culture issues. And I was wondering if you have encountered anything like that. And you're like, yeah, I would love to put together a quote or something and a few thoughts and reply to you, because I don't do well. I like to prepare everything in writing, and they're like, okay, sure, and just be very responsive and try to support what they're looking for as much as you can. And after a while, you'll find that they may be reaching out to you more than you're reaching out to them. And it's one of the reasons that if you look in certain markets, you'll see the same companies used again and again. I talked. I think it was either late last year or early this year with the company that I see all the time in the Baltimore Sun, and I asked them, "Do you pay for that?" And they laughed and said, "No, we just the first time they called us, we were just very responsive, and we drop everything. And if I need to bring in the HR person or someone else in the company on the call, I will, and then we'll get them quotes and photos, and we just drop everything and immediately are helpful to them. And because of that, they just call on us whenever they're in a crunch or they need something, and they do it again and again. And that's the recipe to being a media darling, is just networking and just getting to know these people. And again, it's probably less than a dozen people, so it's not a daunting task, and it's something that you can just sort of do on a regular basis, and it really will pay off in a local market, in any market, really, if you lay the groundwork and just do it.
Yeah, so there's a lot to unpack there. So one of them that I pulled out of that too is that media needs stories, right? They need you, and so the idea of pitching those ideas, is a welcome thing if it's has that right angle, if it has the credibility behind it, like you were saying. And I imagine, Mickey, that over the years, with all the conglomerations of, or like, the media kind of shrinking down and papers closing down, yeah, the list of media contacts in a local market is shrunken, like you said, what, less than a dozen across all kinds of media, right? So it's not as many relationships to juggle, that, or are the bars lower, I guess, really now than ever before. But what you did say, there's still a lot of work there. And I can see why people go, Mickie, just do it for me, right? Like, just, because everyone's working, doing their own thing, whatever their business is, trying to build their business, even though they could bring it in house. Yeah, will they? I don't know. So, interesting stuff. So let me ask this question, because uh, using a PR company can be a little bit of a gamble, right? It can pay off huge, and sometimes it doesn't pay off at all. And I'll give you a quick example. My company exhibits at a trade show for trade shows called Exhibitor Live. And so we were, this was a couple of years ago in Louisville, Kentucky, and I paid a local PR firm to try to drum up some, whether it's interviews. And because I'm a magician, I'm a good guest, right? Like, I can do different things. And so I spent like $3,000, to kind of do something. And maybe that's not a lot, but it was like $3,000 to see what happens. And then it was 2 days after the event was over, I was back home, and they're like, "Hey, can you be at this studio?" And I'm like, "What? You missed it." Like, they did nothing. And then and so in their defense, they said, well, it was a really busy news time, so they couldn't get. So it's like, so if someone's stung like that, what are the expectations maybe businesses can have from, working with a company like yours? And I know you're talking about, it's much more affordable. So taking a smaller bet is enticing to companies, I imagine.
Yeah, so unlike a PR firm, we're mostly a press release distributor at eReleases. We do offer writing, but I encourage people to write your own press releases. They're not rocket science. We have a lot of samples and templates on our website, but really spend your effort on what you're going to write about. And that's where the real magic and strategy comes in. If you look at what everybody else is doing with their press releases, uh, you're you're probably not going to be successful. The cruel world of press releases is that 97% of these press releases do not generate any earned media. And so the odds are against you. And that being said, why bother? And my take on it is focus on the 3% of press releases that are getting picked up. And there are patterns within them. And these are things that you can replicate and do yourself. And I always tell people, don't approach it as doing one press release, approach it as doing a PR campaign. So you're looking at 6 to 8 press releases. Being a small business, I'm not expecting you to do these in 6 to 8 months, but maybe over a year. Maybe it takes a year and a half. But find a cadence that works for your business. Again, at the minimum, quarterly, and really pick 6 to 8 strategic ideas. Look at what you have in your pipeline. Do you have a new product coming out? If so, do not do what 97% of people do. Here's our new product. Here's a list of features. Here's a soft quote and a page to learn more. That is 97% of product launch press releases. And, journalists or storytellers, and I've already talked about the importance of a story arc. It's hard to build a story arc with a list of features. And so one of the immediate things that you can do is incorporate a use case study. This product or software or solution didn't come out, without you having people try it. And so, pick someone who had a good experience and share it. Hey, here's this company. This is the situation they were in. Like maybe, they had been losing 7% a year. And all of a sudden they used your logistics software solution that's designed to get cost under control and predict things. And at the end of the 90 days, it looks like they're going to forecast a 3% net profit for the first time. That's a tangible benefit that you can show, and then have a quote by them talking about how easy it was to use the product, or how they feel like getting this under control now allows them to focus on other more important aspects of the business to leverage more profits, whatever it is. And that allows the journalist to look at that product launch press release and say, wow, there's a story there. My audience, which, they're gatekeepers, they're protecting their audience, would want to learn about that. They're trying to decide what will educate or entertain, or ideally both, their audience. And so your incorporation of that use case study helps them along to do that. So, focus on these strategic types of releases and approaches, and you'll have much, better results. I have a free video training that's just an hour long that goes through the strategic types of press releases you should be considering. It's the 3% of press releases that do get picked up. And for anybody that's interested, it's at eReleases.com/plan, PLAN. There's no upsell or anything like that. I designed it for my customers to get them to do more strategic types of releases, because I know if they have more meaningful releases, they'll have better results and they'll stick to PR longer. Um, and I have one press release that has never failed. And I'm just, shocked that PR firms don't offer that. I talk to people who have spent $20,000, $30,000 over a 1-year campaign with a PR firm, and they said they've really got almost nothing as a result of it. And yet, if you do this one type of release, it usually results in 8 to 16 earned media articles every single time. And it's doing a survey or study within your industry. Anybody can do a survey, and by you raising your hand and actually doing it, it elevates you to a thought leadership position within your industry. And it really gives you a lot of respect and credibility. And it's as easy as just asking a few meaningful questions that are timely right now, like maybe how AI is impacting the industry, or the perception of AI impacting your industry. It could be about, work culture stuff coming out of the pandemic. Seems like a lot of people are really comfortable working from home or hybrid situations, and that's changing the work culture. But it can also be really specific to your actual industry. So I like to use SurveyMonkey. I like 4 questions per page, and that way you can do 8 questions or 12 questions. And on the last page, you can put some left field questions that are fun or really quirky, and sometimes those can really go far. But then take that link and approach a independent or small trade association in your industry. Avoid the large ones; they don't need you. They have their own media teams. They want to control everything. But the small and independent ones, you probably aren't even aware of them, and yet they exist. I did a podcast with a PR professional, and she cut me off right there and said, well, Mickie, our industry is the one exception. Public Relations Society of America is the only thing there is in the US. And I was like, there's over 400 other trade associations for PR in the United States. Some of them are very small and esoteric, like Florida, or mid-Atlantic PR firms, but many of them are equivalent to who you are in your business. I think one was PR firms of less than 50 employees. Well, that's the bulk of the market, except for the big ones. And so that would be a perfect trade association to approach. Reach out to them and say, hey, could you send this link to your members? I'm conducting a survey, and I would love to include you in a press release I'll be issuing over the wire in the coming weeks. And about 2/3 of the time, these small and independent trade associations will immediately say yes. This is an opportunity for them to get media attention, and they often don't get it. And so they see this as a win-win. And I do say that we are looking to get at least 100 responses to be statistically relevant. And if you don't, I circle back with them and say, could you push this out with social media or email? I'd hate for you to lose this opportunity because we didn't get the 100 responses that we need. And usually we get it, or pretty darn close to it. And then you pick the biggest aha moment from the survey, and you're going to focus a press release on that. You're going to have an amazing quote by you, analyzing why you felt the numbers skewed a particular way on an issue. You're going to build out a page on your website where you put all the questions and answers and maybe some quotes about specific ones and maybe data points as well, and link to it in the press release. And every time I've walked someone through this, it's usually 8 to 16 articles just
Wow.
by doing that. And I think I'm about ready to create a product for it, because so many of my customers still don't do it and they want someone to do it for them.
That's
But
what I was thinking, Mickey. It's like the holy grail that you got in your hands, and yeah, it should be productized in a sense. So, if anyone's listening here, you just got pure gold right there from Mickie Kennedy. That's awesome. Okay, so you gave us a lot of great newsworthy ideas, or the strategies to make sure there's some good stuff that are in that 3%, because I find that interesting too. Just what are the commonalities of that 3%? And that's what that video training is about, it sounds like, right?
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Gotcha. Okay. And so eReleases.com/plan was what you talked about, where they could get that. Where can people reach out to you, Mickey, if they want to get in touch?
Sure. So all my social media is on the lower right of any page on my website, eReleases.com. It's my own personal LinkedIn, so that's a good place to reach out to me. However, if you're looking at PR, considering it, feel free to reach out to the staff. You can reach out on the website by chat or email or phone between the hours of 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. Eastern time. And we don't have any salespeople or anybody working on commission. We're pretty much straight shooters if we feel like we can be a good fit, and we can guide you through the process, especially if it's your first time or your first time using a service that actually goes over a wire.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for, pulling back the curtain on that, the whole public relations world, and how really accessible it is to smaller businesses, and to kind of get their feet wet. So I appreciate it. And yeah, thanks for being here.
You're very welcome.
All right. And to all our listeners, thanks for tuning in once again. And until next time, you know what to do. Stay engaged. All right. Thanks, Mickey. Perfect.
Sure.
So I appreciate it. Hey, I think I'm a potential customer now that, this is what happens when I have people on my podcast. I end up buying books of people who I interview, and then but it's all good. I'm going to check that stuff out, because definitely we want to leverage some of our, new, and this is where I get into this mode where, it's like, oh, we got a new client, who cares, right? And that's the stuff that you see on everyone else's news page, the product, like finding that story within that to leverage, because we've got some big wins, but who cares, right? So we got to make that work. So I'm definitely going to check out your stuff and see how we can work. And I looked at the pricing already, and it is affordable to take those shots, right? Like, it's not,
yeah.
Get rid of the bad taste in my mouth from my
and if you look in the footer, there's a link to a new customer special, and you can get package rates for that as well coming in.
Sure. Okay. Very good. Well, thank you. My assistant Ross, she does the editing and does all the other stuff. She'll send you a link to the Zoom recording and everything, and then also tag you for when we come out with little snippets and put it out. So we probably don't have too much in the hopper right now, because we're kind of coming out of a summer slow time. So it'll probably come out pretty soon.
Okay,
So,
that sounds good.
okay.
I'll make sure that my social media guy puts it out there and we amplify it to our audiences.
I bet you can. All right. Thanks so much. You have a great day there, Mickey. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for listening to Engaging Personalities. If you believe this world needs more engagement, and you're an industry leader, or you have an interesting take on rehumanizing business, go to go.engagify.ai/podcast-guest to apply and come on the show. If you got something out of this interview, do you mind sharing it on your social media? Just grab a quick screenshot with your phone and text it to a friend, or post it on the socials. If you know someone that would be a great guest, tag them on social media to let them know about the show. Include the hashtag Engaging Personalities. I love seeing your posts and guest suggestions. We are regularly putting out new episodes and content. To make sure you don't miss any episode, go ahead and subscribe. Your thumbs up, ratings, and reviews go a long way to help promote the show and mean a lot to me and my team. Want to know more? Go to our website, engageify.ai, or follow me on LinkedIn. Thanks for listening, and stay engaged.